I'm here to just talk about myself and our campaign and what really our vision for the Secretary of State's office is, and I'll get more into that in a second. But I worked as a poll worker in Detroit on Election Day this past November, 2008. At the end of the day, at about 7:45, a young woman rushed in. She was about 19, and she said, "This is my first election." This was in Northwest Detroit. She said, "It's my first election. I'm so excited to vote." And we were sort of, tidying up for the day, and looked her up on the list, and I looked at the registration list, and she wasn't on it. And we looked up and said, "I'm sorry, you're not on the registration list. Are you sure you registered?" She said, "Oh yes, I definitely registered." And I said, "Well, we don't have you here. Let's see where you're registered." So we looked her up on the statewide voter file, and we found that she was registered to vote, but she was registered to vote on the other side of the city, about 20 minutes away. So we said, "I'm sorry, it looks like you're registered to vote in another precinct. And under our laws in Michigan, you can't cast a ballot outside of your own precinct." And she said, "But I just moved here last week to live with my grandmother, so this is where I live now. Why can't I vote here?" And we had to explain to her that under Michigan law, you have to register 30 days ahead of time. And we said you could cast a provisional ballot, but it might not count if you're in the, she said, "I don't even know what that is. I'm not going to get across town." And we gave her directions to the precinct and everything. And she said, "No, forget it. By the time I get there, they'll be closed." And we offered to call. But she just said, "This is too frustrating. Forget it. I'm leaving." And she left without voting. She didn't vote in this election. And that to me is unacceptable. I mean, that to me is the laws should not be set up to block people from voting, period. And that's what that young woman experienced, a sort of intersection of election law and administration in our state that is set up to block people from voting. Now, I come at this from my parents' background, which is their special education teachers. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, very similar area and town to Detroit and Michigan, declining steel industry and a lot of similarities to the declining auto industry. But from them, I really learned the importance of access. Access to health care, access to education, access to jobs, access to protection of all of our rights as citizens, and the basic line of that is access to the vote. Because if we don't have access to the vote, then nothing else matters. And if we can't choose who's making the laws, then what is democracy? And I moved to Alabama after college to work for the Southern Poverty Law Center, and investigated hate groups down there, undercover for the FBI and other folks that we informed of hate activities in the South. And living in Alabama, I really developed just a commitment to continuing the work that had been done, both in Alabama and throughout our country, and really throughout our world, to defend our democracy and to make our democracy the best in the world. And just developed a commitment to do whatever I could to make sure the vote was accessible to everyone. And with the belief that if everyone votes and participates and is an educated voter, then the policies that come out of DC and Lansing and everywhere else will be better. If everyone feels that they can run for office and that the political system is open to them, then we'll see a more responsive government. We'll see a better government. And so after that, I started, well, what I'm going to do is work on legislation. Because if we have laws in place that protect access to the vote, then that's all we need, right? So worked on the Voting Rights Act, worked on some other stuff, and then the 2000 election happened. We all remember Florida. 500 votes, and a Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, making small individual decisions like removing people from the rolls and certifying a election, the final tally before a full recount had happened. And as a result of her decisions and some others, the election was decided for Bush in a way that I think almost everyone now agrees was inaccurate, was not an accurate reflection of what the voters in Florida wanted. And in my view, it's the Secretaries of State's job to make sure that that election reflects the will of the voters.